paragraph in Ois Vav on page Shin Chaf. In the beginning of Ois Vav, so the Rebbe explains the Inyan of Tfilas Asher that he davens for someone else. And the Rebbe brings that amazing medrash of the three people. He brings obviously a third of the medrash. Three people go to the king. The third one says he doesn't want anything for himself, but rather there's a Medina Nechreves. There's a Medina Planis. There's a city, Yichareva, and it's destroyed. Yishalcha, and it's yours. Gazor shetibane. Decree that it should be rebuilt. That's the tefillah of the Oshi. That's tefillas Moshe. And the Rebbe asked a very, very powerful question. That's a beautiful tefillah, but why is it necessarily intrinsically connected to the fact that Moshe is an Osher? Anybody could have asked the same thing. That was the question that we had at the end of the first paragraph in Ois Vav. The second paragraph, the Rebbe just explained to us, what does it mean, Gezor Shetibane, basically? Meaning that's the part of the Medrash that the Rebbe was explaining. That the Tikkun of Malchus, Moshe's davening for Knesset Yisrael, the Tikkun of Malchus, which is Knesset Yisrael, and the Medina, which is a place and space, is sourced in Malchus, time and space, source of creation. Medina is also Miloshin Din, constriction, Malchus. So the idea is to undo the inyan of, and I'm going to just throw out another technical term, but we saw it just in miyut al yureach, to bring about the fixing of the limiting of the moon being Malchus, that which receives from the sun, and to bring about a revelation of Atzmus or Ein Sof in Malchus, and that will bring about a binyan nedeyad, that'll bring about a fixing of Malchus, such that there's a revelation of a level of godliness that there's no relationship whatsoever to the notion of lacking. And so even though Malchus is a place where there's certain ebbs and flows, there's times of greater revelation and lesser revelation, times of a Beis HaMikdash, times without a Beis HaMikdash, if a certain level of godly reality is revealed in Malchus, that will bring about an everlasting tikkun of Malchus, and there'll be no golus after that geula. And that's what the Usher is asking the Melech. So that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's what Moshe Rabbeinu is asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bring about a situation that the level of Atzmus and Ein Sof will be revealed in Malchus, meaning in the world, and then the world will be in a constant state of Geula, what we referred to today in the Rebbe's terms, Geula Mitis Vashlema, the true and complete redemption, Geula She'ein Acharei Golus, a Geula that doesn't have after it a Golus. The third Beis HaMikdash, Mashiach, that's how we understand the Tkufa we're in. Yeah, that's what we saw yesterday. So I'm going to start that word olamot, the bottom of the paragraph. Ignore that word. We're going to get to it, don't worry. It'll feel bad for only a few minutes. In terms of counting up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines up. In the middle of the line, after a comma, it says ubichdei. Now we read this. We're just going to read it as a line that's somehow a synopsis of everything we saw in this chapter. Ubichdei shabinyan shalai. In order that the building of it, of the Medina, feminine, shalah, Malchus is also feminine. Bebechinas binyan adeyad will be an everlasting edifice. She'ein shayach shetecharev chas v'sham, that it's not relevant in any way, shape, or form that in the future it will be destroyed again. Because after all, whatever level of geula we've experienced as a people over the last 3,500 years, that geula was something that was able to be done away with because they ended it. Right now we're not in a state of geula, we're in a state of golus. Okay, so there was geula, but it obviously wasn't a geula binyan hadayad, because binyan hadayad means it stays that way. So how do you bring that about? So we're just seeing what we said outside, but it's always so much more important to see it inside. He, who, al yadesha nimshach bo, how do you bring this about? Nimshach bo, it should be drawn into a gilui atzmas or ein sof, a revelation of the essence of the light of Ein Sof, shelamayla mi'or hashayach la'olamus, that is beyond the light, that is relevant to worlds, which is Malchus, right, or Mamale, much higher level of light. On the level of Mamale, there can be states of darkness and states of revelation. There can be states of revelation in Mamale. Okay, but here we're talking about a level of light that the notion of concealment, the notion of simple word, golus, doesn't exist. No such thing. A light beyond any lacking. So, there has to be drawn into Malchus a light higher than that which is generally revealed down there. Because the light that's down there, this higher level of light, there's no notion of concealment, there's no notion of light disappearing. There's no notion of God reverting back to a state of concealment, of hiddenness. Not relevant. Okay. So there has to be a revelation of what Ein Sof, and that's what the Usher is asking the Melech. Build it. But he's not asking build it in a way that it's going to fall apart in 10 years. Build it in a way that it will never, ever, ever revert back to a state of hareva. What's that? In Ruchnius, reveal in Olam Hazeh atzmas or Ein Sof, a level of godly light that's beyond change. Yeah? We've got the equation. Okay, now we mentioned at the end shiur, but what's our basic question? Our basic question is, what's the question we're trying to answer? What's the question we asked at the end of the previous chapter? We mentioned it this morning also.
Can anyone pray on behalf of others? Why is it specifically Tfilas Hashem?
Beautiful. Why does it have to be Tfilas Hashem? What's always a good idea, right, is at the side of each little paragraph, write a 3 or 4 word, not 25 word, because then you just set the whole paragraph over. 3 or 4 word little synopsis, like, what's this paragraph about? So then when you look back at the mind, you say, oh yeah, we asked the question, this is the question, and here's the answer to the question, right? And then it's much easier to remember. Just on the side here. Sometimes they print books with that. There's a little 2 lines on the side of a page or something. It's always important to know which point to emphasize and which point not to emphasize, etc. I always remember I had a friend. I learned in yeshiva with him. He was a medical student in Switzerland, and he said in the beginning of medical school, I don't remember his name, very, very nice guy, very special guy. He said at the beginning of medical school, so they would sit in these big, huge, lecture halls, and you would get a lecture from some professor. There's no doctors in Switzerland, they're all professors. Get a lecture from some doctor, and they would tell you to read something, and then they discuss what you read, and teaching you whatever they're teaching you, anatomy, whatever you happen to be learning. So there was a particular textbook that they had, and the amphitheater looked like this. He said it was very steep. So you got a lot of people in there. It was very steep incline, and he was sitting there with his book in front of him on the desk. Someone sitting there, someone sitting there. And he had learned the page, and he thought the whole page was very important, and he had highlighted with a yellow highlighter basically every line on the page but 2. In the middle of the page there's a little space. The professor gets up and said, I hope everybody read the assignment last night, but I would like to focus on the only 2 lines on the page that are really, really of absolute importance. And then, of course, he reads the 2 lines that he didn't highlight with his yellow. So he spent the whole rest of the class sitting like this. No one should see his book because he was embarrassed. But that can happen, right? That we sort of miss the major point. So, but it's important to teach ourselves how to find that major point, right? Okay, so we now know what it is that the usher is asking for. We still don't know exactly why he has to be the shiur, even though we mentioned it yesterday. We're going to see it now. V'zeu tfilas Moshe. Zeu Shem. So this is that, the tfilas Moshe, nikris tfilas usher. Dafka the usher. That Peter's tfilas usher who? Shat tfilas shalei hu mipnei shu ashir. That his tfilah is because he's an usher. So who's the only person who could possibly ask for this level of godly light to be revealed? Moshe, because Moshe is aware of that level of godly light. That level of godly light shines in Moshe's life. Now, Moshe can teach you and I about the existence of that afterwards, but Moshe is the one who's the source of it all. Kizesha Moshe hispala, that which Moshe daven sheyumshach b'malchus, that it should be drawn down into Malchus, Gilui Atzmas Ad Ein Sof, the revelation of the essence of infinite godly light, Shal Yadei Zed Dafka, as a result of this specifically, Tibane, it will be built, Bebechinas, in a quality of Binyan Adayad, everlasting. Why can Moshe do that? Because Moshe is the Osher. What did we say Moshe was? Bechinas Das Elyon, the level of Das Elyon. 2 levels of Das. See if we remember. 2 levels of Das. Das Elyon and Das Tachter. Now, even if you don't understand exactly the ramifications of the equation, it's still very, very important to remember the equation, so that then the more you learn, the more information will fill in your understanding of the equation. So Das Tachter. That's the easy one, because that's what's talked about in Tanya. What's the role of Das Tachter? What does it do? What does Das do? I'll take out the word Tachter so it won't sound so technical. In Tanya, 3rd chapter in Tanya, what does Das do?
Understanding.
What?
Understanding.
No, that's Bina.
It's knowledge.
Das in English is knowledge, but that doesn't mean anything. Das, it performs a particular function. Brings about a synthesis of 2 things. What are those 2 things? No, absolutely not. It's Das Elyon.
Emotion. Action. Emotion.
Not action and emotion. Das is intellect. Shmuel, what does Das do? Shmuel, you're going to save me here. What does Das connect? What to what?
You know it.
I would say, okay, what does that mean, to know something? I just
you
know.
internalize it. It's not.
Oh, so what's beautiful? It's internalized. What does that mean? What?
It's like on the periphery anymore.
Okay, beautiful. What you're saying is all true, but you're not answering my question.
Sorry.
What does Das do? It connects intellect to emotion. Not action to emotion, intellect to emotion. Action doesn't have to be connected to emotion. Emotion has to be connected to action. Because emotion is on a higher level and action is on a lower level. And you're bringing things down, so to speak. So you're connecting a higher thing to a lower thing, allowing it to resonate and express itself in the lower state. Okay? So, the sheet. So Das Tachtern, which is not what we're talking about, but we have to know this. This is 3rd chapter in Tanya, meaning this is something you really do have to know, right? To read through Tanya. Now, Tanya is a very hard book, but the basic understanding of the ideas, it's certainly the first 12 chapters, it's very much attainable. So Das is that level of intellect. It's a power of intellect that connects intellect to emotion. I don't think that's it. Is that it?
No.
Oh, it might be. It has coffee all over it. There's coffee all over it, but it's not that page. We're on the next page. I don't know whether you have the next page. I gave you yesterday.
Which
The Maimah, were you learning? You weren't in Shir yesterday? Oh, I'm sorry. You were in Gemara Shir
which
yesterday. You were in Gemara Shir yesterday. I'm sorry. Anyway, I do not have a copy. I'm sorry. So you just have to look on or you'll listen. But, I'm sorry.
I have.
Oh, you have that? Oh, good. Without coffee stains. Now we're calling it Das Tachton. In Tanya, you wouldn't know that because it just says Das. Das Tachton is that power in intellect which allows intellect to be internalized in emotion. Which is what Shmuel was saying, but you have to be able to say it technically. Because then if you don't, they don't really, it's, if you would ask a doctor what a heart is, and he says, well, it goes bump, bump in the middle of the chest, I think he'd probably say, well, maybe I want to go to another doctor. It's true it goes bump, bump in the middle of the chest. Well, it's true, not quite the middle. Das Elyon, and we even wrote this on the board. Das Elyon connects Chochmah and Bina, connects two different powers of intellect. We said that again, this is technical, but it's important to have these ideas in your head, even though I don't necessarily know how to apply them yet. Beseder, but I'll never know how to apply them if I forget the idea when I hear about it. Right? If I'm learning anatomy, it might be that the teacher of anatomy will discuss a certain part of the body that you're not sure of. Okay, but you write it down and you know it exists. So then when you get there, you'll say, oh yeah, right, I remember you talked about the spleen. I always wondered, what does that do? But there's such a thing, right? I still don't know what it does, but we've all heard of it. Okay.
What was the second part of the what is it?
Das Tachton, what does it connect? Intellect to emotion.
Okay, so
Das Elyon, what does it connect? Chochmah to Bina. We're okay?
Intellect and emotion and thought.
Beautiful. Now, what's the source of Das Elyon? Arich, that level in Keser, which is the source of Chochmah. Right? We talked about this a little bit. I put it on the board. It was up there in the corner, but it was taken off. What's the source of Das Elyon? Atik. Pnimius Keser. The inner level of Keser. Should I write it on the board again? These things you don't even have to write down anymore. You can just take it on that way. A lot of people take pictures of it. And then they erase it when their phone tells them that they don't have enough space. Right? Okay? So, we said that there's Das Elyon, which is things that have to do with each other, that are somehow synonymous or connected. Das Tachton. Higher, lower. That's what those words mean. Now, what's Das? Das, obviously, is a connector. So, Das Tachton is connecting what? Connects. No, that's
Emotions.
right? Intellect to emotion. Right? In other words, internalizes intellect. It's now part of my emotional reality, which is subjective me. Right? What does that mean in real life? In mundane matters? I understand that exercise is good for you. I doubt there's anybody in this room who intellectually doesn't understand that exercise is a useful thing to do, and you'll have more energy, and you'll feel better, and you'll live longer. But everybody knows that. How many people exercise? Have I internalized that intellectual knowledge, or is it just intellect? Right? I know, eating certain things is bad for me. Don't eat it, but I eat it. Why? Well, because I haven't internalized that intellectual understanding such that it becomes part of my emotional conscious reality. Okay. So too with God. God's great. Do I love him? Please not get personal. Okay. Das Elyon, what's that?
Das Elyon.
Chochmah and Bina. Connecting Chochmah and Bina. Right? Now, what's the source of Das Elyon? Atik. What's the source of Das Tachton? Atik. What's Atik? Inner Kesser. What's Arich? External Kesser. Okay, now we talked about what that means, right? But we'll do it again. That's okay. These are not easy ideas, but there's no reason in the world that I can't get the equation. At a certain point, these ideas will be so much part of your conscious reality that you'll use them as masholim when you're talking about whether or not the food in a restaurant was any good. Well, it was fine, but the waiter was an Atzilus. It was just like crazy. Okay. Atik is Panemius Akesser. What's Panemius? Panemius is, we said, the being of something, what it is. So what is Kesser? A completely transcendent level of reality. Has nothing to do with words. Completely transcendent level of godly reality. Not God the Creator, as we talked about yesterday. Right? What's Arich? Arich is that level of Kesser. Now Kesser is Soivev, right? That level of light we've been learning about. Arich is that level of Soivev that is the source of the first level of Mamale. Now what I just said should ring a bell in your head, right? Because we learned about this. Soivev, infinite light that's too powerful to be expressed in any specific way. Mamale, the level of godly light that allows itself to be clothed in what we call kelim. Those kelim allow for a specific and unique expression of that light. Where's the first place that happens in a very revealed way? Eilam Atzilus. And what is the reality in Eilam Atzilus that comes into revelation? What's there? What's up there in Eilam Atzilus? Very simple answer to the question. If you know it, it's simple. If you don't know it, then of course it's excruciatingly difficult. But if you know it, what's up there in Atzilus that isn't in a revealed state above Atzilus? It's there, it's just not revealed. Atzilus is the source of neshamas. 10 spheres. 10 spheres. 10 different levels of godly reality. 10. 10? I thought we say every day God's one. He is one. Of course he's one. It's not 10. It's not 10 gods. There's one God. Okay. But since that one God wants to have a relationship with a reality of multiplicity, the world you and I live in, the first step in that process, it's not exactly the first step, but in terms of the place, we don't call it the first step, the place where all of a sudden, in godly reality, there's a revelation of many, is Eilam Atzilus. And what's the many? 10 spheres. What are they? Godly. It's not that it's not the Eibishter. It's all him. He's just revealed different aspects of himself in the context of 10. So to speak, what else came into reality in Eilam Atzilus? 10. Because until Eilam Atzilus, what is there? 1. Infinite reality. Infinite reality by definition is 1. By definition, right? Why is infinite reality by definition 1? No, not sure. Yes, but no. Well, where does 1 end and 2 begin if it's infinite? Right? Doesn't have an end. So you can't say, well, this ends here and this begins here. Doesn't have an end. Right? So the essence of godly light is it's infinite. It's revealing that aspect of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that is unlimited. But it's not exactly unlimited godly light. Because as much as it doesn't have an end, it has a beginning. There's a point, so to speak, where all of a sudden, godly reality reveals itself in what you and I call light. The closest you can get in physicality is that at some point, the sun stops being the sun and becomes sunlight. Right? The sun isn't light. The sun is the sun. What comes out of the sun? It's called light. Right? Is there light in the sun? Yeah, well, there's light in the sun because there's cavities in there. But the sun is not or, it's a ma'or. The Torah calls it a ma'or, a luminary. It's not or. Or is the stuff coming out of it, so to speak, which is it. So we talked about this last week. We can certainly say, boy, the sun's hot today. And the sun is hot today. The sun's always hot. Sunlight is hot today. Sunlight is bright today. Sunlight in Vegas works, and in Minsk doesn't. In December on a nice sunny day in Vegas, it's warm, it's beautiful, it's very nice, hot. In Minsk, a nice sunny day in December is minus 40 degrees Celsius. It's freezing. Right? Okay. Why? The sun doesn't work? No. I don't know. I don't get how it should make such a difference, but okay, God figured it out. The angle of the light of the sun is such that it doesn't warm you up very much. Go to Minsk in the summer, beautiful. They'll be swatting the mosquitoes and the flies. It's beautiful, warm, sunny. I've never been to Minsk in the summer or the winter, but right, I assume it's nice. Right, Moscow has exactly the same climate as Montreal. Unbelievably cold winters, but very, very nice, warm, pleasant summers. Right, Montreal in the summer is beautiful. Okay. Ottawa's colder. Second coldest capital city in the world. There's one in Siberia or something that's colder. Canada, C-A-N-A-D-A. Okay, so back to Das Elyon and Das Tachton. Das Elyon is a very, very lofty level of reality that is so lofty, it is completely transcendent of worlds and brings about the synthesis of two very powerful aspects of our soul called Chokhmah and Bina, our intellect. Levels which don't really exist in much of reality, right? Because in animals, there's no Chokhmah and Bina. They don't have intellect. They have the level of intellect that powers their emotion. It's called the intellect of the animal soul. Now, in humans, that also includes Chokhmah and Bina. But in animals, it's just the ability of intellect to come to decisions. It's called the intellect of emotions, right? Because emotions have intellect also. Your hand has intellect. Everything has intellect, right? But not the intellect to do a math problem, right? That's real intellect, right? Human intellect is that unique intellect. Only humans could possibly study mathematics or Chassidus. Animals can't.
Muscle memory?
What? I'm sorry?
When you mean the hand has intellect, are you talking about something like muscle memory?
B'diuk. A hand can be taught to play a Bach concerto on a series of white and black keys. Mine has never been taught to do that. There might be someone in this room who was taught to do that. Their hand remembers how to do that. And if you've ever had a serious injury in an ankle or something like that, what will you have to learn how to do again? Balance with that ankle. Oh, it might even be a walk, right? But, at first you won't be able to walk just because it hurts. At a certain point, though, you have to do physiotherapy, not because it hurts anymore. You can walk on it fine, except what? It forgot how to balance. What do you mean it forgot how to balance? It's an ankle. Well, it forgot how to balance. And it has to learn how to do that again, which is really quite astounding. It's just a bunch of muscle. Right, the muscle forgot what it does. Now, it didn't forget what it does like you forgot the last thing on the shopping list. It's a completely different type of forgetting. But it's still something to do with the intellect of, right? Because all 10 spheres, which start with intellectual powers, Chokhmah, Bina, and Das, and then the emotive powers, and then Malchus, which is the source of action. So all of those 10 levels of reality are incorporated in each other, and you know that from counting Sphira. All the Midas are incorporated 7 times 7. Okay. So even Chokhmah and Bina are incorporated in all of them. So there's a Chokhmah and a Bina in Malchus. What's that? muscle memory. There's such a thing, right? There's people who this hand can go like this in a very sophisticated way, while this hand is going like this in a very sophisticated way, and they're playing something with 6 or 12 strings and making quite astounding music from it. Now, how do you learn how to do that? Well, you teach your fingers to just move that way. And at a certain point, you don't have to tell at the beginning, you have to tell your fingers, C is the top one and the second one and the bottom one, or so whatever it is, right? And then G is, okay, move one over there. And basically, if you can play C and G, you can do every Dylan song. Okay, fine. So you'll teach your finger. Now, at a certain point, you'll have to move this one over there and this one over there. At a certain point, you don't. Why not? Because you learned how to do it. So Chochmah and Bina, as much as they are very, very lofty powers, they are also lofty powers that express themselves in mundane, relatively mundane activity, physicality. Okay. But they're still very, very powerful things, and the only pure expression of Chochmah and Bina down here in this world, in terms of created reality, is Zos. Because we have this thing called human intellect, which is absolutely unique. No other creature has it, and it's the reason we can do things against the will of God and destroy the world. Chochmah, Bina, and us. Right? The only creature that can do anything against the will of God is a human. Why? His intellect can decide that he wants to do something else. Dogs can't do anything against God's will. They just do what dogs do. Right? Beating up the cat isn't nice, but it's not necessarily against God's will. It's just that's the chip in the dog's reality, and he's going to see a cat and go berserk. Okay. Don't take on the cat, because the cat might hurt you first. But if the dog's big enough, in the end, he'll probably win. Is that nice? No. Is the lion killing the cheetah nice? No. We always root for the cheetah. But it's not evil. It's just lunch. It's what lions do when they're hungry. And they don't do it when they're not hungry. Lions don't go kill cheetahs just because it's fun. Only humans would do that. Humans will take a gun and blow the head off the cheetah just because, oh wow, that was cool. Right? Now the really good one won't blow the head off the cheetah because he wants the head in his living room, so which is really grotesque. Okay, so there's different levels of intellect, but intellect itself is a rather lofty power, but it's not completely transcendent of you and I. It's the source of you and I. It's the source of our conscious reality. Why are we aware of ourselves and life around us? Because we have this thing called intellect. That's where it all happens, is in there. Why are you, you even, I understand it's a nervous system issue, but until you become aware of it, it's not going to hurt if you stub your toe. You can stub your toe and not be aware of it yet because you're so busy concentrating on something else. Klutzes building sukkahs, religious Jewish men building a sukkah. Invariably, he's going to hit his thumb with the hammer. But he won't necessarily notice when it happens. And then 5 minutes later, he'll see some blood and goes, where's that? Oh, when did that happen? Well, he was concentrating so much, his Chochmah and Bina were so focused on this, he didn't pick up the signal to be conscious of the fact that his thumb hurts. Then it'll start to hurt. Once he's aware of it, he'll go, ow! I understand, it happened 5 minutes ago. He was busy sending you all sorts of signals. Hello, stop with the stupid hammer, you moron, you keep hitting me. Right? And we just ignored it because it's so busy. And then that look they get when they're concentrating, nothing else exists. Their two children are playing over there, and who knows what they're doing. Completely oblivious. Okay. So it all happens in Chochmah and Bina. Everything that you and I experience happens in Chochmah and Bina, but they're still very, very lofty powers. Now, there's a source of that, and there's two sources of that. There's a source of that is all about Chokhmah and Bina being the conscious reality that you and I experience. And then there's a higher source, which is Chokhmah and Bina being that which can connect us to God and allow us to transcend the physical reality that we experience, which is Das Elyon. Moshe lives there. Moshe lives in a place of Das Elyon. Das Elyon is an incredibly powerful level of godly light. Atzmus Erd Ein Sof, the essence of the infinite light, which we've seen in the Mimer. And what's the source of that? That's Atik. That is Atik. And Atik means uprooted, a level completely and totally transcendent of physical reality. And when one second, and when Moshe asks that be brought down into the world, he wants that to bring about a binyan adayat, a complete fixing of the world, and it's Dafka Moshe who can do that because Moshe is Das Elyon. Moshe is the one who can make that request. And that's why he's the usher. That's why this is Tfilas usher. Yeah.
Moshe was always there.
Moshe was there. That was Moshe's conscious reality. So he's Bechinas Das Elyon Shemekabel Mi Atik, that receives from Atik. The word Atik means ne'etak, uprooted, not connected, transcendent. Atzmos Orengshav Shelamayda Migeder Eilemes. The essence of godly light that's beyond the defined reality of worlds. Completely transcendent. Okay. Yeah? So that's why that's why Tfilas Osher is Moshe Rabbeinu asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu to bring about a revelation of a level of godly light that's so powerful to bring about the everlasting fixing of the world, called Geula Mitis Vashlema Mashiach. That's Moshe. That's what he davens for in that medrash. Why can he do that? Well, because that's where he is. Can he open you and I up to such a reality? He is. Right? What are you doing? You and I, if we're serious about this and actually make it our business to remember what we learn and to write it down and to create a place in our head where all of these ideas are orderly and understood, so Atzmos Ein Sof is part of your life. Are you experiencing the revelation of it like Moshe? Of course not. Are you aware of the fact that such a thing exists? Yes. Does that completely change your understanding of reality? Yes. Completely. Do I necessarily bring that into my emotional state? Das Tachton. Bring it into my emotional state so that I act in accordance with that all the time? No. Does it change my emotional reality? Yeah, sure. Of course it does. As much as I would like it to, well, I haven't worked hard enough to make that happen. It's going to take work. It's not going to happen if I hang around. It's only going to happen if I do the hard work necessary to make it happen. In order to make room for godly reality in my conscious reality, I have to, so to speak, move aside my obsession with physical reality. It doesn't mean I'm not involved in physical. When I say I, obviously I'm not thinking about me. It doesn't mean I'm not involved in physical reality. I'm involved in physical reality. You have to be involved in physical reality. The Abish created a physical world. You're a physical being, and he wants you down here involved in physical reality. Okay. But it's not taking up space. It's necessary and has to get done, and it gets done. It's not where the person's head is. That's not what he's interested in. Right? The famous story. I heard it in the name of the Tzemach Tzedek. There's different sources. I mean, some people say it's by Rashi. I heard it in the name of the Tzemach Tzedek. Of a Chassid the Tzemach Tzedek who made boots for a living. He was very into his factory that made boots. And Tzemach Tzedek said to him, I've heard of people who put their feet in boots. I've never heard of anybody putting his head in boots. Your whole head is in boots. Right? I remember sitting in Mayanot Ball with Gimel Tammuz. There were some people from a particular country visiting, said hello, how you doing? Whoever was bringing asked them, what do you do there? They have a factory for ball bearings. You know those little balls, right? Ball bearings. Someone has to make ball bearings, right? Factory for ball bearings. So here it is, Gimel Tam, as you're thinking about the ultimate meaning of life, and at 2 a.m, when the filters have been cleaned out a little bit, you encounter someone whose life. So you wonder, like, how much of their emotional, intellectual being is involved in these ball bearings. I hope not very much. Now, he's got to do a good job running the factory, right? He's got to have his head in it on some level, but hopefully, there was a story of a chassid here in Eretz Yisrael, up at Lubavitch. He's since passed, but a very special yid. He came from Russia, came to Eretz Yisrael, and he needed a job. He was here in Yerushalayim, he needed a job. So he was working in one of the rock quarries outside of Yerushalayim. He'd been in Siberia, knew how to work. Right? He was in a rock quarry, being one of the guys out there banging the rocks. At a certain point, the people who ran the company realized that guy out there banging the rocks, looks like he has a little more intellect than necessary just to bang rocks. They called him into the office, they asked him a few questions, they asked him, would you like to work in the office? Now the office had a big advantage, a fan. No air conditioning, right? But a fan. I mean, it was 100 degrees out there, rock quarries, Eretz Yisrael in the summer, it's pretty hot out there. Right? Okay. So he said, yeah, amazing. Obviously, he's going to get a raise, and amazing. So he worked in the office a while, he was amazing, he was so good at it, incredible. After a period of time, I don't know how long it was, 2 weeks, a month, 6 months, I have no idea. At a certain point in time, he went to them, he said he wants to go back to the rock quarries. I said, what are you, crazy? You want to go work out there and you don't want to work in here? This is a true story. A guy named Rabbi Baruch, who's like a real person. You don't want to go, you don't want to be in this room? He said, no. So why not? He said, when I'm sitting here, it takes a lot of intellectual energy to do the work that I have to do. And it's hard for me to concentrate on something I'd like to think about. When I'm in the rock quarries, I can think about Chassidus all day long and not worry about anything. And he went back to work in the rock quarries. Wow. Wow. Chacha Fagan was the secretary of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Came into the Rebbe crying, tears. I said, what's wrong? He's working for the Frierdiker Rebbe. What could be better than that? He said, all the things that I have to do for the Rebbe, it takes up so much time, it takes up so much intellectual energy and emotional energy. I don't have time to learn Chassidus and daven like I should. It's killing me. Rebbe told him that's the way it goes. This is your shlichus. Just put up with it. But what was bothering him? This is like a funny thing that I'm spending so much time by the Frierdiker Rebbe that he doesn't have time to talk to God. Frierdiker Rebbe is pretty holy. I know he's not God, but you're doing pretty amazing things if you're spending all day by the Frierdiker Rebbe, right? But it's driving him crazy. And he asked to be relieved of his duties. I said, no. The story that I told you about Chil Shabbos, that was him. Right? That the fact that the store was open, that's not Chil Shabbos. Chil Shabbos is if you daven, you say the words Haidu without having thought about God for an hour before. So that's Chil Shabbos. Tzarech Lahavin. Let's go a little further. Tzarech Lahavin. The Rebbe is about to ask an amazing question. I was talking about this with Shalom yesterday because we were just talking about the Maimer, and he was really enjoying it, and he said, "This is like incredible. I'm getting it. I'm starting to actually understand what we're learning." And so I said, "Okay, but wait until you see the next question of the Rebbe." And it's a killer. It's wild. And he burst out laughing. He said, "Really? That's what happens next?" I said, "Yeah." Okay. Now what? This is called Tefillah L'Moshe, right? Rebbe's about to ask an unbelievable question, and this is a question that'll help us. It'll take us through the next part of the mind. But Tzarech Lahavin. Dilafia now, based on everything we've said up until now, Shetfiloso Shel Mesha, the Tefillah of Mesha, Sheyumshach Atzmus Or Ein Sof B'Malchus, that it should be drawn down, the essence of godly light into Malchus, right? That's what we just learned. What does that mean in layman's terms? The world should be fixed. The world should be a place of a godly revelation. Hu mipnei shemeshu das elyon. That's because Mesha's das elyon. Mesha's from a place where that level of light resides. V'lochein b'yecholta lahamshich orzev b'malchus. Therefore, he's able to draw b'yecholta. He has the ability lahamshich to draw down orzev this light b'malchus. Hamshoches hagilui b'malchus. This drawing down of the revelation into Malchus al Yedei Moshe is hu l'cha'ora at first glance b'derech milamayla lamata, from above below, right? Moshe, so to speak, is above, and he's asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu to draw down this light below. That's what it sounds like. Why? Don't look at the next line before you answer this question. We'll just see if anybody can imagine what the question is going to be. What are we going to have to explain in terms of that understanding of the fact that it's coming from there and all the way down? What have we been explaining up until now? What is Mesha doing? Okay, what's that called? Okay, what's that called? There's a word that's been used in the Mimer over and over. It's a translation of all that word, but we want to need that word. Tefillah. Tefillah Smesha. What's Tefillah all about? Where does Tefillah originate? Above or below? Below. Torah comes from above and descends below. Tefillah starts below and ascends above. How is this Tefillah Smesha? This isn't Tefillah Smesha. This should be called Torah Smesha, because this is drawing godly light from above down into Eilam Hazeh. That's not Tefillah. Tefillah is you and I down here trying to figure out how to elevate ourselves up to there. Tefillah is the response of the below to connect to the above. That's Tefillah. That's what Tefillah is. That's why it's so hard. I think most of you, all of us, will have certain difficulties concentrating on things that we're reading. Some people more, some people less. Okay. I think most of you, if you open up a book, a Torah book, and you start reading that book, especially if you read it in a language that you feel very comfortable in, you start reading that book and you read it slowly and carefully because you actually want to understand it. I would imagine that you could read a paragraph, pay attention to what you're reading, and understand the idea such that if someone asked you as they stood behind you, what are you reading? You'd say, oh, I just learned an interesting thing. I just read a Sikh of the Rebbe in English, and the Rebbe asks a question, he gives this answer. I'm just two paragraphs in, but that's what's happened so far. Is that a reasonable thing to say? Because you wouldn't have such a difficult time concentrating on the words that you're reading. Right? Okay. What if I put a siddur in front of you? By the second word, you're nowhere near what's written on the page. You're thinking about almost anything else. How does that work? I don't understand. If you give me a Maimar Chassidus, I'll read it, and I'll start at the top, and I'll get to the bottom, and I'll tell you what's on the page. You give me a siddur, if I look up to answer Kadosh, 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 when I look down, I forget where I was. Why do I forget? Because I wasn't there, so of course I forgot, right? Because if I was there, I wouldn't forget. But I wasn't there. So I'll go, wait. And if I want to remember, I'll make a mental note. I got up to Perseach Es Yadecha. Okay. That's so hard to remember. I don't understand. Tefillah is really hard because tefillah comes from below. Tefillah, who's davening? Now, obviously, I want my Nefesh Elokis to daven, but my Nefesh Elokis can't do anything in this world unless it gets the Nefesh Bahamis to do it for it. Right? My Nefesh Elokis wants to put on tefillin. Of course, it wants to put on tefillin. It's a godly soul in it, and it's clothed in the body of a male that's Jewish. Well, by definition, it's a Nefesh Elokis. So it wants to put on tefillin in the morning. Okay, but what does it have to do? It has to somehow figure out. Now, it might be that it gets lucky and the kid was born in a family that talked about this, and he saw his older brothers, and he's been waiting to do this his whole life, right? But it also might be someone who never heard of tefillin. So somehow the Nefesh Elokis has to figure out how to get this Nefesh Bahamis, this conscious human being walking around, because he's sharing this body with this Nefesh Bahamis, who's a conscious human being who might know about a baseball team but has never heard about tefillin. And he has to figure out how to get the Nefesh Bahamis to hear about tefillin somehow. Okay, so it might take a while, right? He might get lucky. He might, be walking along the street and someone goes, "Hey brother, did you put on tefillin today?" So the Nefesh Elokis gets all excited. Okay, come on man. Say no and say you want to. Come on, no. Here, I'm gonna illuminate as much as I can so you'll be somehow aware of some Jewish energy in you. And maybe you'll look at him and go, "Oh, that would be cool. What's that?" Ha! The Nefesh Elokis is so excited. Finally, this Nefesh Bahamis that doesn't know anything actually is going to put on tefillin, which will open it up to whole new vistas of godly reality. Who knows what's next? Right? Fasting on Tisha B'Av probably is going to just, when's the next fast? I want to fast. I put on tefillin today. I want to afflict myself. I want to be spiritual. Right? Okay. Nefesh Bahamis. So now putting tefillin on your Nefesh Bahamis, once you hear about it, is not that difficult because you have this prop in Gashmias that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is imbued with unbelievable godliness and gives us this incredible ability to connect to Him through this mundane physical act that mitzad itself has no meaning whatsoever, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu imbues it with infinite meaning. It's called a mitzvah. Okay. Tefillah, there's no props. It's just your conscious reality, the words on the page, and trying to get your conscious reality to express the true meaning of the words on the page, which is all about how God's great and you should love Him. And Nefesh Bahamis might not be interested in that. Might be thinking about breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, anything but that. Okay, davening's hard. It's called a milchama. Shas, sleisa shas krova, Chazal say. The time of davening is a time of battle. Why? Because it's my Nefesh Bahamis out there, so to speak, without any props. I mean, we do have a few props, in chakras, so we wrap ourselves up in tefillin. Us married guys, we wrap ourselves up in a talis also, which is nice, it helps. But bottom line, you have to say the words. And it's hard. And that's the avodah from below. That's tefillah. So why is what Moshe does called tefillah Moshe? Tefillah l'Moshe. This isn't tefillah. This is like Torah, which comes from above, descends below. You want to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Instead of reading a novel, read some Torah. But you'll concentrate on it. Why? Well, because you enjoy intellectual ideas. And if this intellectual idea, you're a human with a brain. So most humans like ideas of some sort. The idea might be a stupid idea, it might be a sophisticated idea, but everybody likes hearing something that they've never heard before. Oh, that's interesting. Right? It might be about a new beer or something, but they'll think about it. Okay, so what if what I'm thinking about is God? So I'm connected to unbelievably holy reality, learning Torah. I don't have to do anything. All I have to do is read the page. I have to concentrate and try to figure it out. It's not that that's not doing anything, but it's just there. The Eibishter is just there. This is just the Eibishter. Here He is, right here. So you want to connect to Him? Well, read these words. You'll connect to Him in a way that's impossible to imagine how great it is. So doesn't that sound like what Moshe is doing? Bringing this incredibly powerful godly light from above below. And yet it's called tefillah. Tefillah is from below above. So why is it called tefillah? read a couple of lines and we'll start. Tzarech Lavi. The Lafi Anal, Shetfiloso Shel Mesha Shiyum Shach Atzmas Ein Sof. We read this. I'm not going to translate. I'm just going to read it. Right? Atzmas Ein B'Malchus Hu Mipnei Shem Mesha Hu Das Elyon. That's where Mesha comes from. Lochein. Therefore, B'Yecholtei, his ability lahamshich or Zeh B'Malchus. V'hamshochas gilui, this is the last line we already read. V'hamshochas agilui b'malchus, the drawing down of this revelation in Malchus, third line, al yedei Moshe, by Moshe, hu l'cha'ora, it seems to be, b'derech milamayla lamata. It's from above below. Umahu inyan tefila l'mesha, so then what is the idea of tefila l'mesha, tefilas asher, the davening of Mesha, the davening of the usher, the tefillah milamata lamayla. Tefillah is all about the avodah from below above. Tefillah is you and I down here wanting to connect to what's up there. Torah is what's up there coming down here to allow us to touch it. That's what Kadosh Baruch Hu says at Har Sinai. Right? I'm going to meet you on the mountain. Vani askil. I'll begin, meaning I'll come down before you go up. That's what Torah is. You want God? Read Torah. You want to talk to God? Try to daven. Not easy. It's a hard thing to do. I mean, if we're honest, it's probably what we're worst at in Torah. If there were no davening in Torah, I think we'd feel more successful at what we do as religious Jews. I can put on tefillin every day. That's not so hard. I can, sit down and learn some Torah. Okay, I have to figure out how to learn it, but I can get some Torah learned in the course of the day. I can figure out how to eat kosher food. I can figure out how to, dress in such a way that I'm representing God in a proper way. And okay, so I can figure that all out. What are we probably least successful at? Opening up the siddur and doing what it theoretically could be, as opposed to what we do. Right? Does that mean we're horrible, terrible, low lives, and we should all get depressed about ourselves and beat ourselves up? No, that's just it's our trying to win the battle. Don't go there. Right? You're amazing, incredible, and wonderful. God created you, and God don't make junk. Okay? God thinks you're worth the time. Keeps giving it to you. Okay, so I'm challenged to use it in a proper way, as opposed to just bury myself in my own belly button and contemplate my own lowliness. Great, that's why God sent you to earth. So we have what to do. Davening's a hard part. Okay. Tomorrow's review. I mentioned earlier, I don't like doing review on Thursday. I'd rather do it Tuesday or Wednesday, review on the Mimer. I'm going to Tzvasta for Frank tonight, so I'm not making it back at 7:30 in the morning because I'm not 35 anymore. I used to be able to drive there and back and for bring in the middle, and I can't anymore. And if I have illusions that maybe I can, Baruch Hashem, I'm married. And she has no illusions that I can. And if I show up too early, she might be there with a bat. Eat some sense into it. All right? So I'm going to sleep a little in Tzvas, in my son's house, and then come back. So there'll be no Chassidus. You guys will have Chassidus tomorrow. You'll be in Zal. I won't usually. I'm there in Zal when you do it. I won't be. Right? I won't be tomorrow. Okay? But tomorrow also happens to be a review in Gemara. So, for those of you who are in both of those classes, just enjoy a day off without having to hear me croak. Enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Kaplan.
Okay, have an amazing. I will see you around. I'm going to get here as early as I can. So, those of you I don't see, have a great job.